All right, so for those of you who just logged in, we are doing pizza tonight. This is a vegetarian pesto pizza. We are going to make homemade pesto. So if you haven't done this before, it's really, really easy, and it probably is going to save you a lot of money versus using the store-bought one. So that's a really cool deal there. For those of you who are following along, you want to preset your oven temperature for 450 degrees. First thing that we're going to work on is, oh, that's so funny. He's emailing me or IMing me that he's having trouble logging in, but I invited him. Okay, anyways. All right. For the pesto, if you're using a store-bought pesto, that is fine. I'm going to tilt this way. That is fine. There's nothing wrong with using a store-bought pesto. I'm going to show you real fast how to do a pesto using a blender. You can also use a food processor. So I'm using this Ninja. You can do this in a food processor and it's going to be fine. Actually, I would highly recommend using the Cuisinart or food processor because that will allow you to get a little bit finer. With a blender, you're going to need a larger quantity. So I am making this according to the recipe, which requires a larger amount of a volume of basil and olive oil. So if you're home alone or it's just you and somebody else, you may not want to make all this pesto. You'd be better using a Cuisinart versus a blender. But if you are willing to save this pesto, you can make it in a large quantity. You can potentially put it in a baggie that's airtight, and you can save it and use it for multiple things. You can put it on pasta, all that. Okay, he should be getting it. So the first thing that you're going to do is you are going to acquire some fresh basil. And the basil that you use, I just got this at HEB. You don't want to use the Thai basil. It's really, really, really potent. You want to use just your standard basil, and you're going to pick it from the stems. We do not want to use stems on this, okay? So I have about a cup worth of washed basil, okay? And I'm gonna put this into the blender. And just be careful not to slice your fingers as you do that. Okay, you can add anywhere between 1 to 2 garlic cloves. So I've already peeled this garlic, and that's gonna really amplify the sauce and flavor profile of the pesto. So you can just throw that in. If you want to chop it up, especially if it's a big piece, you can do that. Okay, next, you have to make a decision. Are you going to use walnuts or are you going to use pine nuts? Traditionally, you would probably use pine nuts. But for instance, for today, I'm using walnuts because I think it actually has a really nice flavor. And it's going to, for me, for my flavor profile, I like walnuts, or you can use a combination of them. Pine nuts is going to allow you to have a more creamy texture though. So it's up to you. Okay, so if you use 100% pine nuts, go for it. If you want to use 100% walnuts, go for it. If you want to use a blend like 50-50, that's the beauty of cooking, is it's an artwork that you get to be in charge and make your dish how you like it. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of walnuts, and I'm just eyeballing it right now. So that's about 2 tablespoons of walnuts. Add those in. Okay. So now that we have our basil, our garlic, and walnuts into the blender, you want to pulse it so that way it breaks it down before we add in the good stuff, you know, the good olive oil and the Parmesan cheese. So you're going to clip it. If you're using Cuisinart, you can just pulse it once or twice. If your blender doesn't have a pulse function, I would run it just very, very quickly just to break things up. So I'm going to hit power and let's pulse it. And this is the initial just to break things up because you're going to be adding liquid in a moment. Okay, I'm going to do it again. And then you want to scrape the sides and push anything that's accumulated on the sides down. And it smells delicious. I wish you were here so you could smell this. If you're doing this at home, it probably smells wonderful. Okay, I'm going to pulse it once more. All right, so your food processor, if you're using a food processor, has a little attachment where you can open it up and you can start to pour in olive oil. Okay, most blenders are going to have similar contraptions. So we are going to add literally a half cup of olive oil. So we're making this in bulk. You're not going to use all of this on the pizza. So if you're starting to being like, whoa, that's a lot of calories, you're only using about a third cup of the pesto on the pizza. So and it's going to be spread out. So don't get worried yet. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. I'm going to fill this with olive oil, and as it's running, I'm slowly drizzling in the olive oil into the pesto mixture, so that way it gets well combined. Okay, so I'm going to start doing this. The volume's going to, from the blender, is going to be really loud, so I'm not going to talk while we're doing that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to set it on a consistent pulse. All right, so you want to scrape the sides, pushing anything that was thrown up or down towards the blades. And then you're going to run it once again. Okay, I'm going to detach this and show you what it looks like. So as you can see, there's a lot of saucy deliciousness in there. We need to add Parmesan cheese to it. So the amount of Parmesan is only about half a cup. Okay, so I have some of this really pre-grated Parmesan cheese, like so. Okay, and you're going to add in a half cup. And I'm just estimating. Okay. You clamp it back on. Okay, you're going to pulse it once more. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll stop talking. And it's just enough to break things up. A little bit more. You want to scrape the sides. It should have a relatively creamy texture. And that looks good. Just to show you, I don't know if you can see down there. So you have a nice creamy texture. Okay, so this is our pesto sauce. We're going to set that aside, and we're going to get our pre-baked. So remember, for those of you who just signed in, we did the pre-baked pizza doughs. Now, if you had it in the freezer, you can defrost it in the microwave and for about like 2 to 3 minutes, and it'll be just fine. If you made it earlier today, you can use that and you'll be good to go. We are going to be using shredded mozzarella. I bought this at the store. So you got your low moisture part skim shredded mozzarella cheese. Now, if you got the block of cheese, the ball of cheese, you can use that. And it's actually probably going to be better for the pizza, but it's really soft. And because it's a soft cheese, one of the things that you may need to do is you may need to put it into the freezer for anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes so it firms up a little bit, then grate it. And that will allow you to have that grated soft cheese for the pizza. I was just in a rush, so the part skim cheese is fine. The problem is when you use the pre-grated cheese, they usually have some type of this anti-packing blend. It has potato starch, cornstarch, calcium, whatever. And it's fine, but it is going to, it's supposed to not have flavor, but like in cooking, you generally want to grate cheese on your own. It's going to have a better quality flavor. Typically. You are more than welcome to disagree with me on that, but that's generally the recommended thing to do. Okay, so we are going to get our pre-baked pizza doughs, which we have here. Okay, so this one was the gluten-free one that we had a little bit of whey protein in, and look how nice that turned out. Okay, and you only baked it anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes. Okay. It should be crispy, but it should be not burnt or anything like that because it's still going to be cooking in that oven with all the toppings on it for anywhere between 10 minutes, like 7 to 10 minutes. So you want it just to be partially baked. Same thing goes for the pizza dough. This we only had in for about 8 minutes, and it was just fine. So the surface is nice and cooked, so that way when you add the toppings on, it's going to be resistant and not absorb that, so it's not soggy, because it still has like 10 minutes to cook. All right. Okay, first thing that you're going to do for your pizzas, whichever you're going to use, is you're going to add about a 1/3 cup of the pesto sauce. So I'm going to take the blade out, and we're going to add that to the pizzas first. That's going to be your first layer. And I'm just going to use a good old spoon. Okay. And you're going to use that spoon to just kind of move it back and forth. So you're making this nice back and forth motion on the pizzas and spreading the pesto across the surface of the pizza. I would recommend keeping it thin. You don't want a lot of, a thick layer of pesto because we still have a lot of toppings to add onto this. So just a thin layer will be sufficient because you got your toppings, you got your cheese. Okay. And I'll show you what this looks like in a moment. I'm going to do this one, and then we will have a viewing. With the gluten, the gluten-free pizza dough, you're going to need to really help it spread across the pizza dough surface. So you may actually have to kind of scrape it across. Okay, so let's go ahead and check it out. So here we have the pesto on this is the wheat flour pizza dough. And then here we have the gluten-free. And I actually had to kind of scrape it a little bit to help it along. Just because it's a different texture and it's not so easily spreadable. In the instructions on the pizza dough, or for the pizza instructions, it said that you can have 2 pieces of garlic that are cut in half, and then you can rub that across the surface. For the pizza dough recipes that we did, we've already added garlic powder to it. So if you chose not to do that and you want a little bit more garlic flavor, you can go ahead and smear the halved garlic cloves across the surface of the pizza dough. You're more than welcome to do that. It will enhance the flavor, but I felt it would be overkill because we've already flavored the pizza doughs. So that's why I'm not doing that step. Okay, so we're going to leave those be. You can then start adding your toppings. So toppings are going to include, first, let's do some spinach. Okay, I just got the this is HEB brand baby spinach, packed spinach. Okay, and you're just going to put that on top. And this is one of those pizzas where the cheese is going to go on last. Okay, we want to get toppings on, and that cheese is going to act as like a protective layer to hopefully prevent stuff from burning. So we add that on. All right, next, you can add on, I have heirloom tomatoes. The instructions said to deseed them. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. So heirloom tomatoes, you can use any type of plum tomato that you like, and you're just gonna add those on. For the meat eaters, kind of like it would be pepperoni, that's what you're gonna use the tomatoes as. Okay, so you add those on. Okay. Next, you have portobello mushroom. So you can get the big portobello mushroom. So if you were with me when we did the fish packet, you can slice that large portobello mushroom up and use part of it. Or you can get the smaller ones and just slice them in half, or not half, but in small slices like so. And you're going to place those intermittently between the tomato slices. And your mushrooms are going to increase your protein absorption. That's really good with this. Because whenever we're eating different types of food, we want to have a well-balanced macronutrient profile. That protein is going to help slow down any of the sugars that are in the bread. That's going to be beneficial. Just slice a little more. Next, yellow bell pepper, and it's going to be julienne cut. So julienne is a long strip. So what I did is I cut off the top, okay, and I've already used some of this. You clean out the seeds. This one's been cut in half, and then I'm going to slice off this bottom part, and we're just going to cut little sticks. Think of it as like little sticks for the julienne cut. Okay, so that's like the example of a julienne cut. And you're just going to place those on. So we're adding multiple different types of colors to this pizza. So that typically is going to give us a different flavor profile, but also it's the colors that we eat generally represent a variety of different nutrients. So the reason why we want that is we want to make our food very nutrient dense. So think of this as a very, very nutrient dense meal. Okay, next. You can add fresh basil on or packed basil on if you want. I'm going to leave it off because that's already a lot of toppings for me. We need to add the cheese on next. So we're going to start off with the mozzarella cheese. Okay. And you want enough cheese just to cover the top. Let me do a little camera zoom in so that way you can see what these pizzas look like. So here is the, see if I can anymore. This is the gluten-free one, and then this is the regular wheat flour. Okay, look how pretty that is. Very colorful. All right, Scoot that back. Next, mozzarella cheese goes on first, and then you're going to put a little tiny layer of Parmesan. So we're just going to sprinkle this on over our different veggies. And the amount, I would say, anywhere between a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup. That cheese is going to add more protein, and that cheese is also going to help slow down the carbohydrate from the bread. So mushrooms in your cheese. Okay, so those have been added. I'm going to add a little bit more. This one, that one. Okay. Then we put a small layer of Parmesan on top. And you can really add any toppings that you like. So if you want to make this a non-vegetarian pizza, you're more than welcome to add pepperoni on. You can add, you can change up the sauce too. It doesn't have to be a pesto sauce. It can be a tomato-based sauce, whichever you prefer. That's what's the beauty about making pizza. There's so many different variations. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick camera look so you can see. So here we have the gluten-free pizza. And as the cheese melts, it's going to kind of roll to the side so it will look better. And then here we have the wheat-based pizza. Okay, so the oven should be already set to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Put that down. All right, so tilting it over here to see the oven. And we're going to place that in, and it only takes anywhere between 10 to 12 minutes to cook. So place both of those in. We're going to let those cook. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to prep you for next week's recipe. Next week's recipe is a stuffed pepper that is stuffed with quinoa and other ingredients. So the key for making good quinoa, for those of you who, you probably are familiar with quinoa. You've probably heard it, they do it in quinoa bowls. It is a semi-grain. And quinoa being a semi-grain means that it is a little bit, it's not the exact same as a grain. It means that its ratio to carbohydrate and protein is different. Okay, how you cook it, it's going to be a little bit different. Quinoa is a superfood in that it does provide you with, it is one of the few plant-based protein sources that provides you with all your essential amino acids that you need. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, as humans, we can't make all of our amino acids to help with our protein building. So we have to absorb these from the foods that we eat. And usually if you're a meat eater or a vegetarian that eats some type of animal product such as milk or egg, you're going to get all the essential amino acids in your diet. But let's say you're a vegan, you have to combine different plant-based food sources to help you get all those essential amino acids. Quinoa is one that's an exception. If you eat quinoa, you're going to get all of the amino acids that you need. So I like that this bell pepper, stuffed bell pepper dish uses quinoa in place of things that we would typically use, such as rice. There is a key to cooking quinoa, and one of the key things to do is you'll see a lot of the instructions to say just add, cooked quinoa to this dish, whatnot. Okay, they're leaving out some important steps with that quinoa. I don't know if any of you have, oh, red onion, yes. I don't know, this was red onion for the pizza, right, Kelly? Totally. Okay. Sorry, where was it going? Okay, first, for making quinoa, you want to first get the pot that you're going to be making the quinoa in nice and warm on your stove, and then add the quinoa and toast it a little bit, and you will hear it pop and crack. You actually want that to happen. The reason why quinoa has a protein in it that it's kind of grassy tasting when it's not sufficiently cooked. Okay, so when you toast it, when you cause it to pop a little bit and you shake it around in the pot that you're cooking it with, it kind of helps preheat the quinoa so that protein breaks down and it unlocks this nutty flavor that's really, really, really good. So you can go to restaurants and you can tell if they didn't toast the quinoa. It will kind of have a subtle grassy note to it. So what you would do is you would place quinoa into the pot that you're going to use, toast it, and then add your water. So once you hear it starting to pop and crack a little bit, let it do that for a few minutes, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes, and then you add the recommended amount of water that you're going to use to cook it. You cook it, then some recipes will be like, okay, you're going to dump out the cooking water, rinse it, and then use it. And that's a sure way of getting away that grassy taste. Other recipes will be like, okay, cook it until all the water has evaporated and you're left with quinoa. If you toast it, you're probably going to be in a better bet that protein has broken down and will be fine. So I encourage you, after me spending like 5 minutes talking about it, toast your quinoa first. It will make it taste really good. There are different types of quinoa grains that you can find in your grocery stores. The first one and the most common one that you're going to see is a white grain quinoa. And it's good. You'll see these used a lot in quinoa bowls, and it's probably the most available varietal of quinoa. The one that I would recommend, though, if you are a texture person and you want something that's more chewy, is the red grain quinoa. Let's see if you can see that. This is red grain quinoa, and it is costs just a little bit more than the white grain. But what you're going to get is you're going to get a little bit more, a different flavor profile, just a little bit. It's more chewy. I personally like it better. There's another varietal, which is the, like they call it, like the royal grain or purple grain or black grain quinoa. That one is definitely more expensive. And when I've cooked with it in the past, it's pretty much the same as the red grain. So save your money, maybe try the red grain out. And they'll have different blends. You'll see sometimes in the store, you'll see a blend mix of the white, red, and the black. And it's up to you what to use. You can also use 100% white grain, and that's fine. Your dish will turn out just fine. Okay, let's see where we are at on the time. We got 3.5 minutes to go, and then it's dinner time. Okay, so it is past 5 o'clock, so if you want to open up your bottle of wine and pour you a glass, now's the time to do it. So good pairing, so with pizza, so any type of Italian white wine would be good. If you're doing reds, maybe a Montepulciano or something like that. Those would be good to go with this. So this dish The pizza in itself is the meal. And this would be a great thing to showcase to any guests that you're having over. I know that we're social distancing, but you know, when we get to start meeting up with people again, it would be a great showcase meal to share with guests that are coming over. And also, this is a great thing to substitute. Like, let's say your family has a tradition of pizza on Friday, or a special type of dish that you do once a week. This would be a great thing to try for that. And the reason why is this one is generally a dish that we want to eat in moderation, but it'd be on those days when we're like, okay, I'm gonna eat what I want, and I want something really flavorful and delicious. So pizza will be good. A homemade pizza is not gonna have the random preservatives that they put into a lot of these pizza doughs. It's not going to have the amount of grease that you find in your commercially made pizzas. So just making it at home, you are actively reducing the number of calories that you're getting. Because we're using fresh ingredients too, just think about all that nutrient-dense food that you're going to be consuming, and it's going to be more flavorful and more enjoyable. Let's see where we're at. We got a minute and a half. We are almost there. And then it's bon appetit. Let me check and see. A little bit longer. A little bit longer, definitely. So we got Chris Cortez. Oh, Chris said, I was literally going to ask what wine you had in mind for the pesto sauce. And I read your mind. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to unmute and ask, or if you want to type them in the text box, we can talk about it. And also, if you have any recommendations, things to add. So I know Kelly said red onions. Absolutely, red onions. If you want to type in questions or substitutions or additions, feel free to do so. I think that'd be excellent to do. Do not judge me. I am someone who I do not like pineapple on pizza, and I know there are so many people out there in this world. My partner is one of them who absolutely loves pineapple on pizza. I know that can be a dividing factor for some. Let's see. Kelly says the whey protein saved the gluten-free crust. Oh, good, good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, the first time that I did that gluten-free one, the crust did not turn out the way that I wanted. And then after reading about the whey protein and how it's great to use. Okay, so we'll come back to that in a moment. Let me get my mitts. Okay, so gluten-free is coming out first, and we'll put that aside. And then let's do the, okay, so I'm going to detach the camera so that you can see these. Okay, so here we have the gluten-free one. Look how nice it's so, it kind of caramelized a little bit on the top. Okay, and then next we have, this is the wheat one. Okay, you want to let these pizzas cool a little bit before you cut into it. Otherwise, if it's still really, really runny, like it will pull off with the knife or your pizza cutter. Okay, so the crust is nice and cooked through. Okay, and it is good to go. All right, let me answer questions, and we are done. Let's see, we got. I'm gonna keep the camera on the pizza while we talk. Let's see. Oh, no other questions. All righty. So if you follow along with me, I hope that you had a delicious, Ryan. If you follow along with me, I hope that you had a delicious, or will have a delicious pizza after this. This one was really short. So send me photos if you decide to make this and how it turned out for you. And then next week, we are doing these stuffed bell peppers with quinoa. So have a great evening, everyone. And I'll stay on for a few more minutes if you have any questions or you want to chat. Otherwise, enjoy, bon appetit, and have a good weekend.